I've known Consul General Bah Hung for many, many years. We've worked together, and it's a privilege to share this with him. The mission of JPAC simply is stated to search for, recover, and identify those who did not return from hostile actions from World War II to present. 2011, these are the locations that we sent investigation teams, recovery teams. Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, we sent multiple teams, multiple times, who actually do operations in those countries. The majority of our effort has gone to the Vietnam War. There are some things happening that may have an impact on that. And I want to discuss those with you and assure you that we're not going to reduce our efforts for the Vietnam War. We're going to continue to do the same level, if not more, and I think we'll be doing more. 2011, 63% of our effort went to the Vietnam War. And you look at the number of IDs, we're already up to 17 IDs this year. I don't know how many more we'll get before the end of the year, but we will get a few more. But I will tell you the cases are getting more and more difficult every year that we go back. Now, some current issues that you need to be aware of. First of all is the National Defense Authorization Act of 2010. This is what it says. The Secretary of Defense has to significantly increase the capability and capacity of the Department of Defense to actually get us to be able to identify 200 individuals a year by 2015. Now, I will tell you that's more than 100% increase on what we have been doing. We've been identifying about 90 people a year. By 2015, Congress has said we want you to be doing at least 200 annually. So that's not just a one-time. That's do get to 200 and sustain that for the future. That's going to be extremely difficult. If we do some backward planning, you can see that we're pretty much behind the power curve already, and that we've really got to increase the number of investigation teams that are going out to the field. We have to be able to find the location so we can get a recovery team on that site. Once remains come into our laboratory, on average, it takes 18 to 24 months until they can be identified. So given those numbers, you can see that we need to start bringing large numbers of remains into our lab by 2013. And so in order to do that, we've got to have locations that we can send our recovery teams, which means we've really got to ramp up the number of investigations. As you can see, we're going to more than double the number of investigations that we've been doing. That's going to require an increase in personnel. And then you see by 2013, we start putting out all of those recovery teams. RT stands for recovery team. So by 2013, we're talking about putting out 100 recovery teams annually. Now, right now, we're doing about half of that, a little more than half. So we've got to increase significantly in both recoveries and both investigation efforts to be able to reach that number. If you talk to the two staffers that wrote the language for the NDA 2010, they will tell you that number 200 is a mandate. They've mandated that we identify 200 a year. If you talk to others in the Department of Defense, some will say it's a goal. We have to have the capacity and the capability. We don't have to meet the 200. I think if we don't meet the 200, we'll be before Congress asking why we didn't make the 200 and where we failed. As I said, in order to do that, we see that there's got to be a huge increase in our staff. We're at about 410 now. We're going to add 208 civilians and 45 military between now and 2016. The first addition will be beginning in October in FY12. We're going to add 78 civilians and 2 military staff, and then we will continue to build to there from there till we get to the 208 and 45 increases. Now this has been confirmed and reaffirmed by the Joint Chief of Staff because a letter was sent to Secretary Leon Panetta asking, are you going to honor those numbers? Admiral Mullen is sending a letter out saying, yes, we are going to honor those numbers. We're going to keep it going. The other thing that we feel that we need to do is we need more laboratory space. So we're currently looking at building a satellite lab in the mainland. Now we have two large laboratories in Hawaii, one located on Hickam in our headquarters building, the other one located on Pearl Harbor. But we're getting ready to build a brand new facility, and we'll lose our building that we're currently in now with the headquarters. So we're going to look at building a satellite laboratory in the mainland. We've narrowed it down to 2 locations, and we will make a decision by the end of this FY of which location we're going to select. First location is AP Hill, not too far from Richmond, Virginia. AP Hill is an Army installation. There's not a lot there. It's a training installation, but they do have facilities, and so that's an area that we're looking at. The second area that we're looking at is Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, in Omaha, Nebraska. They have great facilities. We could move in there and be ready to start operating within a couple of months because they already have buildings that are there that are well designed and suitable for what we're actually going to be using those buildings for, and that's a laboratory. Our budget is going to increase by about $30 million in FY12. That's to pay for the additional personnel as well as establish the satellite laboratory and all the other requirements that we will have to begin the path to 200. We're breaking ground for this building the 30th of August. This building is 136,000 square feet, 3 stories, about 50,000 square foot of laboratory space. And so it will be a state-of-the-art facility built again on Hickam Air Force Base. The bad news is we're probably not going to be able to move in until 2014. We're looking at May of 2014 to actually begin operating out of that new facility. We had programmed about $96 million. Contractor thinks he can build this building for $69 million. In Vietnam, we've done most of the sites in the south and most of the sites in the north. There's a few left. So the majority of the operations that we still have to conduct are the losses that occurred in the central part of Vietnam, in the mountainous regions, in the highlands, that's going to require helicopter support to get our teams in there, to get the equipment in, to get the base camp equipment in, to actually get the teams on site. And so we lost our ability to use helicopters. There is this thing called CARB certification. And the Department of Defense says you have to have a CARB certified helicopter to put Department of Defense personnel on. CARB certification is done by the Air Force. They have inspectors that go out and inspect, but there's a lot of things that have to be in place before you can actually begin to use those helicopters and get them CARB certified. So for the last year, we have not had any helicopter support except cargo. We could not put any of our personnel on the helicopters. We have put in a waiver to use the helicopters without a CARB certification. This had to go all the way up to the Pentagon. We finally have that process in place, and we're going to be able to start using those helicopters. The Undersecretary of Defense actually is one that had to grant the waivers to be able to do that. We're going to continue the waiver process. Consul General Ba Hung, when he was the head of the VNO SMP, and others have asked us if we could increase the pace and scope of operations in Vietnam. We want to do that. We need to, in order to do that, we've got to put more boots on the ground. We've got to have the personnel in doing research, investigations, and recoveries. When you're being held to numbers, where can you go get the big numbers? Well, the easy answer is you can go to those World War II B-24, B-17, B-25 crash sites, And we can go down to Papua New Guinea to a B-24 crash site and recover 9 to 11 people from that crash. That's a crew of a B-24. Or we can go to Vietnam, do a recovery of an F-100, and hopefully recover the pilot, one individual. So it causes us some real concern when you start mandating numbers. We were opposed to having those numbers mandated from the very beginning. Unfortunately, we were not able to win that battle. We're going to be using what we call a Vietnam recovery team, where a number of the individuals on that team are Vietnamese. We will still have our anthropologist directing the actual recovery operation. We'll have a medic and a linguist. We can then put more teams in the field because we will not be utilizing as many Americans in Vietnam. Now, we've tried this. Vietnam has had some sites that were restricted to Americans. We could not put American teams there. The Vietnamese have been working with us. We have a forensic science academy where we actually train forensic scientists in Hawaii. We've done training to the Vietnamese counterparts that are going to be working, and we think this is going to be a successful program and going to allow us to put more recovery teams on the ground in Vietnam. A couple of other things that we're going to be doing. We're enhancing our research and investigation teams. And a research and investigation team is a really hybrid of a true investigation team. Investigation team only has one linguist, so we can go out and interview witnesses. Our research and investigation team has a number of linguists that have the capability not only to interpret, that they can also go into libraries, archives, look at documents, read documents. We're going to increase the number of RIT teams, our research and investigation teams, as well as we're going to be looking at trying to get greater access into the archives in Vietnam, see if there's any other documents that will assist in trying to account for the Americans. The cooperation with Vietnam is outstanding. They were willing to stand up and do the Vietnamese recovery teams, allow our RIT teams to make greater progress on those last known alive. Even though legally everyone has been declared dead, there's been a finding of death for everyone from the Vietnam War, but we still carry some people as last known alive. In other words, the last time we had any contact with them, they were on the ground. We know most of these were pilots that were bailed out of an aircraft. They were alive on the ground, and then we lost contact with them, and we're not sure what happened. And so we still have a number of those cases. That's number one priority with us. It's number one priority with the Vietnamese. Trilateral witnesses, where we bring Vietnamese witnesses to Laos and Cambodia because they had troops there. So it's been very successful in bringing those witnesses in to actually assist us in locating burial sites. Good working relationships in Laos. Unfortunately, this year we had to cancel an entire joint field activity because we didn't have helicopter access. The Lao would not give us permission to drive to the sites, and so we wound up having to cancel, which cost us a lot in our investigation and recovery efforts. If we get more people, we're looking at possibly trying to add more teams into Laos. Right now, Laos has a cap of no more than 54 Americans come into country on our teams when we do a joint field activity. So some things we need to work through with Laos, but I think we'll get through those, and we'll see the pace pick up there as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of cases in Cambodia, but the cooperation is excellent. Cambodians essentially will allow us to do anything that we ask, not a lot of archives of anything that would do us any good. But again, the witness bringing in the trilateral witnesses, bringing them from Vietnam and Laos has paid big dividends in Cambodia as well. And so I leave with you our motto for JPAC, until they are home. Thank you very much.